Hello and welcome to GameSack. It's time to take a look at some more games that don't get enough love. Now, these aren't necessarily the best games ever to exist, but they're all good. And if you do, restrict yourself to playing only the games that everyone always talks about, well, then you're missing out. And since these games are criminally overlooked, if you don't like them as much as I do, then you should be arrested and put in jail. You don't want that, do you? No, of course not. So let's get started. This is Ghost in the Shell for the original PlayStation from THQ, released at the end of 1997. This game is based on the TV show, which itself is based on the movie, at least I think. I'm not a huge anime fan, but I do own the movie, and this game ain't it. It doesn't matter though, as the gameplay is incredible for the most part. It was developed by Exact, the same amazing people behind the Jumping Flash games, as well as a few great titles on the Sharp X68000. You play as the Rookie, because of course you do. You pilot a tank, which kind of reminds me of a ladybug. You have unlimited ammo, and you can strafe left and right with the shoulder buttons. Press them both together and you can dash forward. This is essential in some parts of the game. You also have a limited stock of screen-dispersing grenades that can be refilled, but you can only carry 3 at once. Each stage is its own mission, and you'll have different objectives that you'll need to accomplish. Usually though, you'll just need to destroy something, or multiple somethings. In some stages like this one, you have a timer as you go area to area blowing up bombs. The timer is not generous at all, so remember to use your dash move. Naturally, each stage has a boss that you need to defeat. These can be fun, especially since they have a life bar. However, you only have 1 life, and you need to replay the entire stage even if you die while fighting the boss. There are no checkpoints. Fortunately, you can continue and try as many times as you'd like, and you'll have no issue trying again, even if running through the stage becomes a bit annoying sometimes. You can also save your progress and come back to it later, so don't forget to save before you power down. The graphics are decent for what they need to do. There's not a lot of color here, but that's okay for the world it takes place in. Between many of the levels, but not all, you'll get animated cutscenes to progress the story. They'll tell you about your next mission, and you might want to listen to them at least once so you know what the hell you're doing going into any given stage. It does feature an anamorphic widescreen mode, and I like that. However, many of the 2D elements like the cutscenes aren't made for this and are instead stretched. The music is minimalistic, yet good. It often has a driving beat that pumps you up for the stage you're in. I think most people who do play this one enjoy it, as I haven't heard anyone complain about it. But I think it's just that most people don't play it. It really does need more love. This one's called Soul Blazer, and it's for the Super NES from Enix. This is not to be confused with Sky Blazer on the same system, which I covered in the last Criminally Overlooked Games episode. This was developed by Quintet, the same people who did ActRaiser on the console. This one's an action RPG, and it works a bit differently than most others. It's definitely overshadowed, mainly because of all of the other powerhouse RPGs on the console. You start out in what's basically an empty field with nothing really around. You make your way into a dungeon to find monster generators similar to Gauntlet, which keep spawning enemies. Unlike Gauntlet, you can't attack the generators themselves. Instead, you need to kill all of the monsters it spits out, and then it will destroy itself and become a switch. The switch can do a few different things, like open up a path to help you advance, make a treasure chest or another monster generator appear, or free a soul. As you free the souls, they'll appear back in the first area along with their homes and whatnot. You can come back out and talk to these people, and they'll give you hints or tools that'll help you make it even further into the dungeon. You can talk to any soul that you free, and these can be people, goats, dogs, squirrels, alligators, or even tulips. That's right, tulips. You can also equip magic, which is that little rotating orb around you, and it can shoot fire, among other things. You collect gems that defeated enemies drop to use the magic. Once you kill a monster generator, it stays gone forever, which is nice. The other monsters will reappear if you leave an area and come back though. And naturally, there are boss fights which are really fun. Hell, this entire game is really fun. I really like building the various villages and talking to the new people or creatures that appear. The action is fun, though you can't move diagonally, unfortunately. You do gain levels and new equipment to become stronger. The graphics are mostly excellent, which is typical for games in this genre on the Super Nintendo. Lots of nice color and detail here. The text is mostly pretty big, except for a few times, like when you're talking to a tree stump. There are a few minor typos here and there. For example, there shouldn't be an apostrophe in tulips. You knew that, right? The music is generally pretty good, and it feels a bit inspired by the overhead sections of ActRaiser. The sound effects themselves are lifted directly from ActRaiser, even the voice when you take a hit. Gotta say, this is a fantastic game and it's honestly quite addictive. It's just so damn fun repopulating the towns. It's a great idea that really adds a lot to this title. This next game I rented when it originally came out, and I thought it was okay at the time and certainly not worth buying or anything, but many years later I did buy it, and you know what? It's not bad. Next is Saint Sword, which is available exclusively on the Genesis from Taito. Taito! This one is an action platformer that gets very little, if any, love. Just looking at it, it's kind of easy to see why. The visuals aren't very attractive and it's extremely stiff. Hey, that sounds just like GameSack! But just like GameSack, there's more than meets the eye. Wait, no, that's Transformers. Let me try again. Just like GameSack, you can actually learn to enjoy it? Yeah, okay, that works, I guess. So, okay, get this. You've got a dude that you control and you need to destroy the bad guys to set the world right again. I mean, that's the best I can do to describe the lengthy story, which honestly I didn't read. Would you read all this? You start out in light blue armor and this is your weak mode. You stiffly swing your sword to attack enemies and your reach isn't very far. You can also crouch and slash and stab upwards, but there's no downward attack. After you kill so many enemies, you'll power up and change colors. Funny enough, the instruction manual doesn't seem to mention this. You change to red and then eventually to gold. Your attacks are stronger and your reach is further. It's actually pretty awesome. If you die, you start back in the light blue armor and your life is hell in comparison. You can also collect transformation tokens as you kill enemies. By pausing the game, you can select one of 3 transformations. There's the Centaur, which lets you move a lot faster, and you can also kick behind him if you hold down and attack. There's the Birdman, which lets you fly all around the screen. And then there's the Merman, or Fishman as the manual calls him. You can only engage this one if you're already submerged in water. Even without this though, you can stay submerged indefinitely, you just move really slow. These transformations all have their own timer and eventually will run out, but they'll last a few minutes before they do. You also get some magic that you can use after each stage and you activate it with a press of the A button. It can do things like freezing or destroying enemies, restoring life, and all that good stuff. You collect MP with the little balls that many of the enemies drop. Overall, the game is stiff, but it's enjoyable. Make up your own joke there. It's not overly difficult, though the stages can be quite large. You need to find the key by defeating a certain enemy and then go to the exit, and just getting the key to show up can take a while. The graphics range from average to decent. There could be more parallax scrolling here, I think, and maybe some brighter colors here and there. The sounds and music are the same way, average to decent. Nothing here is bad, just not very inspired. The box design must have been the first thing this particular marketing team ever worked on. Where the hell's the damn game logo? Oh, there it is. Oh, and want to read the text on the back? Good luck! I do think more people should give this one a try. There's one thing about this game that absolutely rocks though. The bosses have life bars. Multiple people recommended that I cover 18-wheeler American Pro Trucker from Sega for a Criminally Overlooked Games episode. This was in the arcade and ported to the Dreamcast, PlayStation 2, and GameCube. This is the Dreamcast version. This is a silly Sega game where you drive a truck from, say, New York to Florida in about 2 or 3 minutes. You get extra points if you beat a rival who constantly berates you. You have a very strict timer and you can add on to it by crashing into cars that have a +3 above them to get 3 more seconds. I really wish they'd give me more time than that. Sometimes you can choose your route, which adds a little bit of variety to each stage. Even on easy, this game is incredibly difficult and I've never been able to complete the second level despite trying many times over the years. It really needs some rebalancing to be enjoyable. The GameCube version, though, plays a little better. The controls feel much nicer, likely due to the controller itself. I was able to make it past stage 2 on my first try in this version. It's still a bit unreasonable, though, and mediocre at best, in my opinion. It also looks a touch softer than the Dreamcast version, if you can believe that. However, I'm not here to talk about this particular game, though. That's right, have you ever heard of the sequel called The King of Route 66? Or King of Route 66, if you prefer. This was only in the arcade and on the PlayStation 2. Obviously, this is the PS2 version here. The setup is similar, but they really beefed everything up here. They've tacked on a story to everything, which itself is silly, but it mainly serves to set up your rivals for each stage. Speaking of stages, you're generally just racing against rivals now, needing to beat them to the finish. There are some stages, though, where you're racing the clock to get a job. These are the only stages that have a timer that you need to worry about. Well, wait, there's actually one other thing that has a timer. Sometimes you choose which job you'd like to do, each of which has a different route, or route. Before you begin the stage, you need to hitch your trailer to the truck, and that has a timer. Not that you really need to worry about it.
Just a little, there's no time left. Looking good.
The controls are similar to 18-wheeler American Pro Trucker in that the steering is slow and it can be easy to jackknife. But now you have nitros. Tap the button and a couple of seconds later you boost for a bit. You can also pick up more nitros in most stages. You can also bust through areas to make shortcuts. The game can be difficult, and often you either lose or win by the skin of your teeth. It is doable though, and that's what I like. Some races, like here along this curvy mountain road, will probably have you messing up and selecting restart again and again. If you make a mistake in these later levels, you might as well just start over. Oh, it's infuriating, but honestly I love it. The graphics are great for their time, but sadly, progressive scan isn't supported here. The audio is pretty crazy, with rivals shouting at you all the time. Maybe it's even a little racist at times.
This might actually be interesting. Let's see how good you can really drive.
The game is really fun though, and most people have never even heard of it. Check it out.
This here's my turf. If you got a problem with that, I'm gonna have to beat you down. Here we go. Here we go.
You guys remember Soul Blazer on the Super Nintendo? I covered it about 10 minutes ago. Anyway, if you thought that was good, you'll be interested in this next one. Here's Illusion of Gaia, developed by Quintet and published by Nintendo themselves. This is kind of a follow-up to Soul Blazer, though not an official one. However, it's another action RPG that often gets overshadowed for the same reasons. Like most RPGs, this game begins a little slow and the story is a little weird. Basically, you're searching for stuff and doing stuff. Oh well, it's the gameplay that matters here though, and overall is pretty damn good. You start the game equipped with a little baton twirl which can move certain objects towards you. Once you get through the lengthy introduction phase and into the actual gameplay, you can attack with said baton. I like that each and every enemy has a life bar, just like Soul Blazer. Once you kill an enemy, it stays dead forever, even if you leave a place and come back. Unless you die, then everything in the world respawns. Still, you want to make sure to kill each and every enemy. Often as you kill the final enemy in a room, you can get an increase to your stats. Other times, a light appears and opens up a path so you can continue on with your adventure. Or it will increase your life bar. Or maybe nothing at all will happen, but it's still worth it to kill everything anyway. One improvement over Soul Blazer is that now you can move diagonally. I like that. There are plenty of puzzles to solve, and often they can be rather cryptic. For example, I knew I had to destroy part of the wall in this cave, but nothing I did seemed to work. It was only when I went back and talked to someone did I get a clue. This in turn helped me out a bunch, and I got through. Other times though, these same characters aren't so helpful, so good luck. I know you though, you'll just look at a guide where it's already been figured out for you. Hey, no shame, just as long as you're having fun. Like Soul Blazer, this game even has some talking turn-ups to give you hints. Sometimes you can turn into Freedan or Freedon, who's a bit stronger and has a much better reach. He doesn't have all of your normal powers though. You'll also be able to change into another form later on. Fortunately, Nintendo has censored the game a bit from the Japanese original to protect you. And thank goodness they did, because otherwise you'd be totally corrupt right now, and so would I. Basically, they made the story a bit less dark and got rid of religious references and the like, and also got rid of cannibalism. The graphics have the quality of a typical RPG on the system, and that means they're quite pleasant to look at with good detail and color, just like Soul Blazer. If you're a graphics whore like I am, you're gonna be blown away by the incredible Mode 7 as you travel the map, which puts amazing scaling and rotation in your face! Mode 7! Ah! The sound and music are also typical and do the job well, but they don't stand out too much in the sea of music on the Super NES. Overall, the game plays very well, and it gets better and better as you go. It's not super long, maybe a bit less than 20 hours, but that's perfectly okay with me. Terranigma is the last of the Quintet trilogy. Again, it's an action RPG that's a bit similar to, but not an official sequel to the other games. It was only released in Japan and Europe for some stupid reason, and I talked about it way back in episode 148, not in North America. So check out my review there. Gotta say though, I don't care much for the font in this one. At least we got two of them with Soul Blazer and Illusion of Gaia here, though it would have been nice to have all three officially released. While I do prefer Soul Blazer a bit to the Illusion of Gaia, this one is not to be missed. This is High Seas Havoc on the Genesis from Data East. It's known as Captain Lang and Captain Havoc in Japan and Europe, respectively. You play as a seal who's a pirate in this Sonic-inspired platformer. Every button does the same thing, jump. You defeat your enemies by landing on them. However, you can also press the button again mid-air to do a kick attack sort of thing. This lets you attack right in front of you. This is also the only way to defeat most of the bosses. I'll get to these guys later. Anyway, you find a girl and nurse her back to health. But then naturally she's kidnapped and you're off to save her. The main bad guy of the game, Bernardo, sure looks a lot like another bad guy whose name starts with B. This game gives you a life bar and you can take several hits before you die, and it can be pretty easy to get hit. You move quickly, and it can be difficult to predict enemies if you're not being careful. There are little diamond gems all over the place for you to collect. Get 100 of these and you got it, you get an extra life. This is good because you're probably going to need these later. There are also treasure chests which contain a few different things, like boots which make you run a bit faster. There's also a little chicken leg and a big meat which restore some of your life. The stages of the game aren't overly challenging, but there's still plenty here to be fun. Usually, you just need to make it to the end of the stage. Some stages will change things up a bit, like here where you need to run from this flame which has a face, because of course it does. If it touches you, it's instant death, and you have a lot of obstacles to navigate through. If you end up dying here, you have to do the entire stage again, and it's not a short one at all. The other stages have several checkpoints in them though, and these can be pretty big. Sometimes there are out-of-the-way places you can go to if you explore to get some extra lives and whatnot. The boss fights are definitely the hardest parts of the game. As I said earlier, they can only be damaged by your flash kick thing. All of your extra lives are going to come in handy here. Sometimes I died just trying to figure out how, where, and when to damage the boss in the first place. They're fun to fight, but they're definitely damage sponges, and of course they don't have a life bar. It's also very easy to mistime your kick, and if you do, you're going to be taking some damage. The graphics here are pretty good, and this one fits inside an 8 meg cartridge. There's lots of fantastic parallax scrolling in most of the stages, and nice color throughout. The music is also generally pretty good with no bad tunes. The sound effects, on the other hand, can be a bit weak or even annoying. Havoc has a voice which is not very good at all. Sometimes when you collect a treasure chest item, a digitized symphonic musical tune plays on top of the rest of the music, and it's not a pleasant experience. Still, this game rarely gets mentioned, and it definitely needs more love. And there you go, 6 more games that are criminally overlooked. Those of you who made it to the end of this episode have once again avoided jail time. So what are some games that you think are criminally overlooked that I didn't cover in this episode or the previous 5 criminally overlooked games episodes? Let me know. In the meantime, thank you for watching GameSack. Are you still playing Sega? You should play Super Nintendo! Well, you're missing out on Mode 7! Stupid Sega can't do Mode 7! Mode 7 provides true 3D scaling and rotation! You think walking on the moon is impressive? Experiencing Mode 7 is way more significant and better! Make it stop! Why do some people think the Earth is flat? Because Mode 7 is flat! Mode 7 is all that matters! I can't handle it! Get the Super Nintendo and experience Mode 7 today!
Play it loud!